great. I'm I'm great. It's a August day in California. I feel lucky to be here.
It's very humid here and definitely really, really warm. Like you have to leave the house at 7 at night.
I know that in we in Northern California get the good weather with the cooling off and the fog. It started this morning. It was like 50 degrees or something with the fog, so it's nice like that. But I'm so excited to see you. I miss you, and I'm really excited about our topic today. We're talking about egg health, and it's a huge, important topic for anybody that's on a fertility journey. And there's a lot of great research and science to cover, and we wanted to talk specifically today about hormone disruptors and pesticides, how that can affect your health, your baby, and your hormone health. Those are kind of the oofs. And then the what you can do about it, because there's some really great research that shows that we can make positive strides and kind of right the ship as far as hormone disruptors go and the effects that it has on our health, our hormones, our egg health, our hormones, and potentially our baby health. So
And I think this topic is so great because a lot of people don't talk about it or know about it. And I think it needs more discussion in just general health as far as protecting potential fertility too. And we should be getting, teenagers on this whole kick. And I thought it was really cool that you and I both prioritize this discussion, parts of it more than what to do toward the end, but with our first or second fertility visit with people. So, in two totally separate practices, I'm in Connecticut, you're in California, we both think this is so important that it makes for, the time is the first or second visit that we get into this. So it's that important. So
with our
really
fertility patients, and then even if anybody, I mean, really, this extends past fertility health and into just the health of our planet, the health of the global population, kind of what we're up against. And that's why it's so exciting to kind of get to have longer conversations in this format, because when we're with a patient, sometimes we don't get to explain everything that we need to, walking them down this path. So can we just back up? Like, we're the co-founders of Cultivate Fertility. We're two natural fertility specialists that have been working for over 30 years combined. We both we've been trained in naturopathic medicine and acupuncture. We both have practices and have seen over many, many years, lots of fertility issues. And then I also work with families. Kara works with families. We both had some fertility struggles on our own, and we now both have families and raise kids. And so these issues about hormone disruptors are really important for fertility, for the health of incoming babies, the next generation, and for the health even of our current children and aging population. It's like super broad spread. So we're really passionate about this.
Right. And the thing that's great about this is pesticides are under this big umbrella category of endocrine disrupting chemicals. So all that big title means is that there are chemicals that we come in contact with daily, and some of them we can try and reduce and avoid, but these chemicals interfere with our hormone systems. And so pesticides is one of those categories. So we're talking about that today. So pesticides you definitely encounter daily just by residues in your foods. So but through what we eat is where we're getting most of our pesticide exposure. If you live in an agricultural area, you're getting pesticides by sort of walking in your house with your shoes and things like that, because it definitely is in the dust and in the soil and that kind of thing. But we're really talking about, how can we change our food to try and help our egg quality. So egg quality, our ovaries store our eggs, we're born with them. And over time they degrade. And, by the time we're in our 40s, which many of us are trying to get pregnant in our 40s, the quality of the eggs is a question. And one of our points and our big, push toward everybody take care of yourself, starting right from the day you first hear about this, is that you can potentially impact the quality of your eggs and get a healthier, happier baby by avoiding some of these chemicals.
These chemicals have been proven to be neurological irritants, and they get passed on. It's really interesting because in the olden days, it used to be that the first baby was the strongest, healthiest baby. It was the most robust because it got the benefit of mom's nutrient density. So in the olden times, it would be sort of that the firstborn typically was the most robust, and then sometimes there would be issues after that. And now, this is a conversation that, like, my partner at Pediatric Alternative, Sarah Benet Sequeira, who's an incredible pediatrician, we have this conversation all the time, because now what we see is that the firstborns tend to get what they inherit is they often inherit the mom's toxic burden. And there's by no fault of the mom, and the mom can be doing everything right and in good health, but it's just by sort of being on the planet and participating in life as we know it, that we have a total toxic burden. You'll hear us talking about this a lot at Cultivate Fertility. And this total toxic burden is, we sort of pass on to our firstborn, and you can sort of see that sometimes there's an uptick in sensory issues, some neurological issues. In firstborns, we always look at sort of like firstborn boys, like, what's happening there? And then often the secondborn and thirdborn are quite these very like robust children without some of these neurological sensory disorders that we see. So
and sometimes, like, the pesticide exposure for the moms and the developing fetus, lower intelligence is actually associated there. So if we say like neurodevelopmental, that seems like this bigger category, but it's like smarter babies if we get rid of these chemicals potentially, right? I mean, that's motivating.
Connected, less eventual ADD or sensory disorders are a big things that we're seeing a lot in children these days.
What are those? What do they look like? What
can be, there's a lot of different clinical manifestations, but these are often the kids that are really sensitive to noise, really sensitive to taste, so have a very difficult time having a broad palate. They're very, their senses are working in overdrive, essentially. Like the tags on the back of their clothing is very irritating to them. There's a lot of just irritations and nervousness, because the nervous system, their brain, is a little bit kind of amped up and overstimulated. So a lot of kids end up in occupational therapy at quite a young age to kind of work through some of these sensory processing disorders. And it's interesting because when you work with two of the pediatricians at my practice have been doing this for a really, really long time. And so they said when they started practicing pediatrics, there was no such thing as sensory disorders. There wasn't, and understanding that before you identify a clinical observation or something, that you're not potentially picking it up, but that it just wasn't quite the same. And obviously we know that we have higher rates of ADD, and it's not just over diagnosis. It's sort of like we're seeing some of the kids coming into the world with a little bit of a harder time neurologically, meaning that they're falling on some of these behavior spectrums, like an ADD spectrum, a sensory processing spectrum. Anyway, so not to get worried, but what we want to do is back it way back and to kind of get the word out that, like, this, you can have a major positive impact on your total toxic burden by making some great changes, which then affects your egg health. It helps your the guy's sperm health. It really helps hormone balancing and getting some of these pesticides or common chemicals, common hormone disruptors that sometimes we just don't even have awareness about.
And the pesticides are linked with poor quality eggs and sperm. So we know that partly by some in vitro fertilization research. It's hard to study people's eggs unless they're going through a process to try and get pregnant, right? But they do say that the failure rate for IVF is higher with the higher pesticide burden in the mom. So that's sort of an interesting thing to think about. So you can potentially maybe get the pesticide burden lower and then have a better outcome in IVF. And then for the baby, the fetus developing in the womb can be particularly vulnerable to these chemicals. And a lot of what you just talked about with the disorders you see in the children have to do with nervous system, and early development in the womb is a lot about nervous system. So you can see how these chemicals could have a big impact on these very vulnerable little fetus kind of developing. And so lower birth rates are also associated with pesticides. And so that's not very healthy. How would that, if you say lower birth rate, it's sort of, I mean, lower birth weight is like, okay, but how does that impact the baby really?
So a lower birth weight,
yeah,
in practice, and we know there's a lot of things that change the birth weight, right? Like nicotine is one of the big things. But what's in cigarettes? A ton of pesticides. So it's really interesting. It's been proven that cigarettes and smoking causes lower birth rates. Mm-hmm. And not only are you smoking nicotine, but you're smoking pesticides. A huge amount of chemicals in a cigarette. So what is what? And a low birth weight, when a woman gives birth to a low birth weight baby, that baby is at risk for a couple different things. One, it just causes more complications for their suck and their jobs, which is really to learn how to eat and to eat robustly. That can be compromised. And we're not talking about preemies but just lower birth rates. So like if a normal baby would be born in the 6 to 8 pound range, a baby's born around 5 pounds. Well, a 5 pound baby is not as robust in the outside world as a 7 or 8 pound baby.
So their immune systems and all their functions might not be as good. You have more risk.
The feeding, the eating, they wake up more at night. There's a little bit more irritation. And that's not everybody. People can raise their hand and be like, I had a 5 pound baby that did great. Yes. But we want the babies to be as robust as possible, because then when they come out, they've got a stronger suck. They've got stronger musculature. They can sleep a longer stretch. They put on weight faster. They meet their milestones faster. And all those things are wildly important to the mom. She's hanging on those milestones being met, and when they're not, it adds a really stressful kind of impact on the family. And so therefore we don't smoke in pregnancy, right? And everybody says you may not smoke in pregnancy because it can cause a lower birth rate baby. And what's interesting is we don't hear you may not eat organic strawberries or not inorganic, like you can't eat strawberries during pregnancy. Right. Even though we know that the methyl bromide is a really strong poison, right? That's on the food, and that's in some of these foods that have been seen as really toxic foods. So I just want to stop this conversation right here and say that if you're kind of new to these conversations, we get really passionate about it. And we've both been on fertility journeys, and we've both heard this information when we've had our trying to get pregnant or just pregnant or with new children, and it freaked us out. Yeah, like learning about kind of the environment and the impact that it can have can be very anxiety provoking. And we are here to say, we understand, we're trying really hard not to freak you out and to empower you with some changes that you can make. So that's really where we're coming from. So if you find yourself getting really panicky or something, just breathe and know, by the time I learned a lot of this stuff, my firstborn was already here, and I was like, oops, well, she got exposed here. And then I'm just did the best I can moving forward.
Right. And maybe some of the unexplained infertility and recurrent miscarriages, maybe some of these things that are happening to you, this kind of information about maybe I should look at pesticides in my diet might help you in some way. We won't be able to measure it, but it's kind of nice to have daily actions you can take that could have a good impact. So this is what we're all about. And I just want to go back to why we even use pesticides. So pesticides are commonly used in our agriculture system, and there's the bugs. You sort of deal with the bugs, and it increases production. And so there's a lot of reasons why people use them, and I don't think we think that necessarily everything you consume has to be organic. That's not where we're coming from. And so we'll come to sort of, these pesticides are in the foods, they're on the foods, which ones should you really pay attention to? And it's interesting because, in looking at the research before just talking to you today, legumes came up as one of the most highly pesticide residues are really high in legumes. And so it got me thinking about how when I go out and I look, a lot of the tofu and the soybean products are organic and labeled organic, because I think people might have an idea about that one, and just lentils. And so that would be sort of that group. Seems like that group would be good to buy organic, in addition to corn, organic. So some of the produce, so it seemed like what I was looking at was legumes and fruits and vegetables. So if we look at that Dirty Dozen Clean 15 from the Environmental Working Group, which is wonderful because it shows us the highest amount in fruits and vegetables, but I don't think they do. I don't know if tofu is really on there. I don't know what categories they do.
Fruits and vegetables. So here, wait,
Yeah.
Let's back it up a bit. So there's a group called the Environmental Working Group. We use their resources all the time. We love them. Thank you for doing the work that they do out in the world. And every year they publish a list that's called the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. And so if you go to cultivatefertility.com under the blog section, that's all one word, cultivatefertility.com, under the blog section, you'll be able to see our produce shopping guide, which is a list of this, we're right in 2020, the 2020 Dirty Dozen and Clean 15 list. So that gives you a sense for what are the most toxic vegetables, the most highly sprayed fruits and vegetables. And it's truly like the things that people love the most, right? They're often they're the things that are the hardest to grow. Cherries, nectarines, strawberries. And unfortunately, the way that our farming system was developed was we do kind of single crop, huge patches of single crops. And other countries that do more permaculture or have a different approach do it differently. But when you have massive fields of single crops, they're very vulnerable to attack by bugs and predators. And so in came this whole chemical industry. I mean, it's a massive industry, and it's been in action in this country for a very long time. And we haven't had some of the strict standards that other countries have had, like in the EU or in Switzerland. If you go to Switzerland and you order in a restaurant, often it shows you the farm that the food's coming from. Or I lived in Japan, and in Japan, when you go and you buy food, it's telling you where it's coming from, what it was exposed, kind of what it's exposed to, and the different things there. So there's more sort of labeling. In this country, we have organic labeling, and that is very crucial. And there's been a movement, a beautiful movement to kind of get back to organic farming. And you can participate in CSAs, you can buy things from local farms and participate in things that way. But often if you're just sort of like buying food without thinking about it much, you're likely having a fairly high pesticide exposure, or buying in restaurants that aren't paying much attention. So I have been controlling my food and my family and buying organic food for a very long time. It's kind of where I put my family dollars. I always have since learning about these things. And that said, I go out to restaurants in my local area and I know darn well that like they're not buying organic food. So there's also this movement of trying to educate people, trying to spend your dollars in places that are providing foods that are organic. It helps the farm, it helps the planet. And we could talk on and on and on and on. But let's get back.
Let me just pop back to the Dirty Dozen Clean 15, because in the whole vein of not getting overwhelmed and actually having something to do, if you have that Dirty Dozen Clean 15 from the Cultivate Fertility website, it's a produce buying guide. And if you just have it on your phone when you go grocery shopping, the clean part are the things that we think you probably can buy not organic. So that's really nice because you're saying, hey, these are likely not to have so many of these residues that could bother, sperm and eggs and potential developing fetus. So that's really good to have. And then if you really know that dirty dozen of these are the worst foods potentially for pesticide residues, then it'll tell you things like, ooh, I'm not going to order the spinach salad because spinach is on the list, or I know kale's good for me, but I'm out at the restaurant and it doesn't say organic, so I'm probably not going to order that because kale is on the list. And the list changes and surprises me often, so it's a great tool. The other thing we didn't get to talk about was one of the issues for many women with fertility is the miscarriages, and pesticides are associated here. So we do look at the research that's showing, the women work at the agricultural nursery or they work at the farm and they have higher miscarriage rates. Women who are pregnant and working in those environments also have the higher levels of issues with the babies that we talked about in the beginning.
Yeah, because this needs to change, and we are standing up with many of our colleagues, people like Mark Hyman, and there's a lot of doctors that are standing up and saying, hey, this is a major issue, what's happening in our food supply and the toxins in our environment. But we have seen what making small changes can really do. And I will say that I love working with children because children, you can see changes very quickly in children. So if I have a family that comes to me and they're sort of eating very traditional products and traditional cereals and food colorings and food dyes and high pesticides, and there's not been a lot of education about that with the mom, and then they make a change. Those children, after they've changed what they've eaten, they sleep better. They have a better attention. They're less tantrumy. They have less aggressive spikes of behavior changes after eating. Like after you eat a popsicle with like a cherry popsicle with red food dye, you can watch a kid go, wah! Or like Skittles or something that's just like corn syrup that likely has that's more of a toxic food product. And you transition them to less toxic food products, you see the difference in their behavior. And I love that with kids because it's just the reminder of like, oh, okay, if that's happening to them, then what's it doing to me? And how's it helping me? Or how's it helping my fertility? How's it helping? So I think that's the exciting news, is that it is something that we can influence and change.
And we have the research to back this up. It happens quickly. So if you change to eat some organic foods within 1 to 3 days, the urine levels of the pesticides go dramatically lower. So it's not that you're just going to have constant exposure. It says that's those research studies, then there's a number of them in different parts of the world, and just a body of research that says that this happens really quickly when you switch to more organic foods. That encourages me because it means that this is about choice. It's not just that they're ubiquitous in our environment and you can't avoid them. You can make some changes and you can change this in your body. So if you're trying to get pregnant, it's one in our first 1 or 2 visits, we get to this Dirty Dozen Clean 15 list, and let's try and work on getting some more organic foods in, because you can change these things and potentially have an impact on your eggs, which is so good.
I mean, we also created our 30-day pre-pregnancy detox in order to do a lot more extensive education on this subject. One of our main pillars for health at Cultivate Fertility is our prevent pillar, our prevent foundational pillar, which prevent means how can we prevent exposure to some of the things that we know affect fertility. So hormone disruptors, pesticides, and we have a lot of information of ways you can change your home, your facial products, your meats, your seafood. So we go into it a lot more dramatically, but for this purpose, we wanted to start with the Dirty Dozen list because you can grab it right away and start to have it impact your shopping.
And then while you're shopping and looking at which foods and which meals to make for you and your partner, this is mostly from Hillary. Dr. Hillary has incredible cooking skills. Let's say we're all very lucky if we're friends with her. And a lot of her favorite recipes are up on the website. So at Cultivate Fertility, there are delicious recipes that have specific nutrients to help with your egg quality. So there's beta carotene and a lot of antioxidants, and they're delicious. The smoothies are up there. So I would start there too, because then it empowers you in a way of, I can make absolutely delicious food and be supporting my fertility. And you don't have to restrict anything. You don't have to feel like I'm not able to eat this, that, and the other thing. It feels like a luxury of, wow, this is unbelievably delicious and I feel really good. So go and look at those recipes. There's a lot for egg quality specifically because we tried to look at those nutrients when choosing those.
So we're talking about hormone disruptors and the effect on egg health. Mm-hmm. We also want to talk about, and we really talked about kind of hormone disruptors and the effect that it can have on your future baby and children. Which is obviously something that we want to help prevent issues there. But we also wanted to just kind of raise a little bit of shed some light on. So Kara made mention of this, that like so many fertility issues are undiagnosed. And we're always trying to figure out, what is that? And a lot of times being natural fertility specialist, this is who comes to us.
Yeah, it's unexplained infertility is the biggest thing out there.
To do. Women don't want to just jump right into IVF or something that they can't afford. They're trying to figure out what can they do. And we wanted to talk about, so then we start to really think about, okay, what are you taking in? What's your total toxic burden? And are you eating things that are affecting your egg health? If you're with a male partner, the sperm health, and your hormone health. So some of these, when we talk about hormone disruptors that are affecting egg health, they're also affecting hormones, because the health of the egg and the hormones are both, you can't pick one
they're intertwined, right?
Intertwined, and they're really crucial. So one thing that we really wanted to talk about in this talk is thyroid hormone. So tell us a little bit, Kara, about these hormone disruptors and thyroid hormone.
Right. So we've touched on most of the other links between organophosphate pesticides with fertility, but not that there's been research that show that these pesticides in your body alter thyroid hormone levels. And I do think that there is this general concept that thyroid hormone is really important to overall fertility. So it's not just your estrogen, your progesterone, your prolactin, all of these, but thyroid can have a huge impact. And one thing that we often catch is thyroid issues being the cause of recurrent miscarriage for women. But another thing that's incredibly important is that we just talked about baby's brain development or fetal nervous system development, and how maybe intelligence could potentially be higher if you didn't have as many pesticides. And guess what? Thyroid is really linked for babies' brain development. So if you're the mom and your thyroid hormones being affected by these chemicals, then your baby is going to have potential issues with their brains. So we don't like that. I think we used to call it cretinism. Is that right? I think that was the old word. It's a weird
somebody born without thyroid. So we screen for this all the time. If you're working with an OB, you're getting screened for hypothyroidism. But there is a connection to these endocrine disruptors and these pesticides and hormones to kind of make your thyroid hormone sluggish. So thyroid issues, hypothyroidism has become a full-on epidemic in the United States. And often, if I'm seeing women after their childbirth years, many of them are having thyroid issues. And many women, I think it goes a lot sort of unnoticed in the 30s, in the 20s and 30s, that the thyroid's it's not operating as it should.
So what would it look like? What does that look like if you might be experiencing it? What should I be looking for?
So symptoms of low thyroidism, hypothyroidism, are fatigue. It's interesting because fatigue, cold, a sense of cold hands and feet. The thyroid is responsible for cellular metabolism and keeping the metabolism moving. So weight gain is often a symptom where women are like, I just don't understand. It's like, I can't, it's like I'm doing everything the same and I'm just stuck with this layer. And weight gain, fatigue, sluggishness, sometimes constipation. So it's actually slowing the metabolism of the bowel and the detoxification. And
dry skin, rashes, dry hair, a lot of the things women are complaining about.
So, these are things that can be caused by many issues. But one thing that we know is that it's very important to make sure that your thyroid is working really well on your fertility and pregnancy journey. It's pretty crucial. And so when we know in the research that these hormone disruptors are affecting the thyroid, it's one of the first therapeutics to just say, okay, you need to sort of get out everything, all these endocrine disruptors as much as you can to give your thyroid a break. And I have seen time and time again clinically, the thyroid can, if the thyroid was just barely functioning and we can kind of get things up and moving, get the zinc stores up, get selenium stores up, iodine, these are things that the thyroid needs. And pesticide exposure can really deplete zinc. Some of these minerals that we need for our body to work right get depleted as we're trying to detox and get exposed to these pesticides and hormones.
Right. We can't really talk about pesticides without talking about thyroid because there is quite a link.
So the good news is we can do something about it. Like Kara said, we can right away print out and look and say, oh my goodness, strawberries are on the dirty dozen list. And I eat strawberries. I make a strawberry smoothie all the time with non-organic strawberries. Switching over to an organic source is so helpful for especially something that you're doing daily or eating regularly. Celery, there's a big movement towards drinking celery juice for health. And we were told in school, like, look if the celery is not organic, like, don't even do it because you're just getting way more pesticide exposure than you are like a healing benefit. So I'm seeing some people buying celery juices in the store and they're not organic. And I'm like, you're basically drinking chemicals. And so we just want to, if you can really just stick with a clean 15 and dirty dozen list and try to have that influence your shopping and your ordering out. I love what Kara said about the spinach salad and the kale salad. Great choices when you have them at home and they're organic. Inorganic, like, is it worth it? So like for me,
probably not a good idea.
When I go out to eat with Kara often orders like,
oh no, are you going to tell them what I eat?
No, but you often order at home. Kara eats so many vegetables that it's totally inspiring. She's just like craves greens and dark leafy greens, and she eats a lot of vegetables. When we go out to eat, she'll be more prone to order like a pasta dish.
That's true.
That might have less kind of this. She won't order the big kale salad, and she'll save it for when she can eat it at home. And it has influenced my thinking in restaurants, like, oh, okay, right. Of course, I need to change the way that I'm ordering in restaurants and potentially shop at places where I know they're serving healthy food, or ask the owners to serve organic options. That's really the best, because then not only are we helping our bodies, but we're creating systemic food changes that will help so many people.
And another really good strategy, I do think, is we are huge into having smoothies for our fertility patients because we want all those antioxidants, and we have great results with that. I think that's really smart. And so making sure that people have the dark green leafies, like a frozen organic spinach, frozen organic kale, and the berries, just the big bags of organic berries, which you think it costs a lot, but a lot of these bigger grocery stores have really big bags in their frozen food sections, and they'll last a very long time. So just having those around
Costco has
are
great options for
and
frozen.
so do, yeah, all of those stores have really good ones. So, and they're organic. So that's fantastic to have around all the time, and you can have an impact.
So can I
So
just
I think that there's a lot to do.
I would love to just tie this in for our listeners. So these pesticides and hormone disruptors, so like we argued, they cause issues with the actual egg quality. They cause issues with hormones that are really crucial for your fertility journey. They cause potential issues for the baby down the line. Let's not totally freak out about that, but that's totally worth fighting for, and getting these things out of your diet. But one of the ways in which they act in the body is they act as they create what's called oxidative stress. And oxidative stress is kind of this inflammatory process in the body. And it causes, like exactly what it says, like a stress on local tissue. And one of the ways to combat oxidative stress are antioxidants. And so you'll hear so much about, you can't be interested in health and not hear about antioxidants. So antioxidants, some common antioxidants are like vitamin C or vitamin E, bioflavonoids, melatonin, CoQ10. These are things that you hear about a lot. But
with egg quality specifically, if people are looking for supplements to take for egg quality, they're definitely reading a lot about that.
And antioxidants. And so what we are like begging for our patients and our fertility patients to do, clients are to do, is to have a diet rich in antioxidants. And like our fertility diet, our best fertility diet that we have done a ton of research on and used with thousands of patients, really. The base of that diet is a Mediterranean diet where you have a very broad spectrum of antioxidant rich foods. And those antioxidants help to kind of combat some of this oxidative stress that we're exposed to by just sort of walking around in the modern world in 2020. And so on our website, we have compiled a lot of recipes that are robust and super rich in antioxidants. And that's like having these beautiful colored plates. And we go on and on about how you build a gorgeous fertility plate in our fertility diet course. But on our blog, which is cultivatefertility.com, under the blog, there's a recipe section that's got one of our favorite antioxidant smoothies. We've got sweet potato curry that's incredibly robust with like beta carotene and antioxidants. There's a cabbage that is full of antioxidants and helps detox pathways. So like Dr. Kara said, like all these recipes, if you can use your food as your medicine and help really reduce some of these stresses that are being caused on a cellular level, you will see changes in your health. You just will. You'll see a radiance in your skin. You'll see increased energy. Not for everybody, but for a lot of patients, when they change their diet and they're eating a lot of antioxidant rich foods, people feel better.
Big impact for diet. Changing diet's a big one. So we're going to wrap it up now and end with this really last sort of summary of getting the Dirty Dozen Clean 15 from Environmental Working Group.
Our website, we have it too. Yeah.
Right. And getting a really good inspiration for recipes at home. So I guess those are the two things, which Hillary has compiled incredible recipes for us.
Well, we're just really excited about cooking and food and the power of using food as medicine, healthy foods, and reducing your total toxic burden and seeing kind of the positive impact it will have on your fertility and beyond. So we're so excited you spent this time with us. Thank you so, so much. Goodbye. For the
We'll see you next time.
Cultivate
Bye.
Fertility. See you next time. Bye.